Today I'd like to talk about the Weston Master II light meter. And in my mouth. Back in the day, pre-1960s, I believe, when you used a camera, you would either have to guess, be very intelligent and know and guess the exposure on your camera, or you could use a light meter. Light meters have been around basically ever since photography was invented. A way of measuring light has always been used by photographers for years and years. And one of these products is the Weston Master II, made between 1943 and 1956, or 1946 and 1953. I can't remember which combination that is. Between the 40s and the 50s, mid 40s, mid 50s. It was made for about 10 years before the Weston Master III came out, and in England it was distributed by Ilford. It's a nifty little light meter, very useful. They cost about 15 to 25 quid nowadays, depending on where you get it. eBay, in store. I got it in a second-hand shop for £20. Made sure it worked in the shop and everything. Made sure it was accurate. So I'd always suggest, if you're going to buy a light meter, an old light meter, always check it in there. If you can, always check it, because they use selenium, which degrades and becomes useless after a while. So a light meter, you would take a reading, set the dial to a certain number, and it would tell you which settings to use, i.e., an 8th, a 60th, f8 at a 60th, f5.6 at 1/25th, or down to 1.8 at 1,000th, things like that. So we'll have a look at it. It's over here, because I was using it earlier over there. It comes in a leather case. I'm gonna have to keep it here because the lighting. Comes in a leather case. If it doesn't come in a leather case, don't buy it, because again, selenium, it degrades after a while, and it needs to be kept in the dark, otherwise it will degrade. If you just keep blasting it with light, selenium just goes kaput. So we'll start with it. We'll start with the case. It's nice brown leather case. Stitching's all right. The clasp is nice. Nui patent 20143/022. So it's patented by Nui, I guess. That's the closure. It's nice, sort of light brown leather case it comes with. To use the meter, you open it up, and you have to open both sides. So there's one side and then the other. So there's two flaps there. You have to open both up and hold it. So you hold it sort of by the flaps there. It's removable from the. Hold on. It's removable from the case, which I think I'm going to do for the demonstration. So it's removable from the case. So you could just have this on a piece of string, dangling from your neck. Which I my other light meter with Leningrad 4. I keep that one on a string around my neck, but I haven't found a string thin enough to go through this one yet. So to use it, you would decide whether you're in dark or light. So if you're in the dark, you're indoors, you would take the back off. You take the back, open the back down there. So you've got this flap, and you pull it down, it locks down. So inside, I'm going to take a reading from my light that I'm recording this, and it says 13. So I'm going to set my film speed. Important to remember with the film speed with these things is always go 1/3 a stop below. So if your film speed is 400 ISO, go for 320. If your film speed is 200, go for 160, because they use their own ASA speeds back in the day. Weston did, for some reason. So if you look at the dial there, you would change this, the ISO here, to, you know, what, using the little nubbin at the bottom, to say I've got 320 speed film in my camera, which I do at the minute. I would set it to 250, and then I would take a reading. So I would take a reading here and say, yeah, it's 13. So then I would turn this dial to 13. Okay, so if I was open to F2, sorry, I messed it up a bit. If I was open to F2, I would use 1,000th of a second. If I was closed down to F16, I would have to use a 15th of a second. So I would go somewhere in between, and I would open at 5.6 at 125th of a second, say, so that would give me a good picture. This is going to be used as reflective or as direct. So if I was to hold it here and get a reading, get someone to get me a reading, that would give me what was reflecting off of my face. If I was to hold it directly to the light, it would show me what is coming directly off the light. So closed when outside, open when inside. You've got a basic tutorial on how to use it. You read the number, turn the number to the dial, the corresponding dial number, and it will give you a range of settings to use. So f1.8 at 1,200th to f32 at a fifth of a second. That's the range I could go for here. It's useful for non-metered cameras. So you've got a camera from, I mean, most cameras from 75 onwards have internal meters. I can't think of one that doesn't. Maybe a super cheap one. But most of them either have an accessory or they have an inbuilt meter. If you're talking like the Nikon F, most Hasselblads, most what's that, medium format Mamiya cameras, a lot of them, most medium format cameras don't have inbuilt meters. The Nikon F and the Pentax, I think the Pentax K1000 has one built in. I don't know, can't remember, but say the Nikon F, that didn't have a built-in light meter. You had to get an add-on for that, so you'd carry one of these. And all large format cameras, I don't think there is a large format camera with a built-in meter. I don't think so. So if you're going to do large format photography, you have to have a light meter. I love this thing. It works perfectly. It was stored perfectly, so it works fine. If you don't trust the meter in your camera, which you shouldn't, if you're using LR44s, which are 1.5 volt, and your camera is used to SR44s, which are 1.6 volt, you can have a difference in metering. And as long as you get a good copy of one of these, you'll always have the ability to do metering. You could always carry a DSLR around with you, but that's just another camera. And sometimes you want to do you don't want the temptation of digital photography. Like when I'm out taking pictures with film only, and I'll carry my digital camera to meter before I bought this. I would always be pulling out my digital camera to meter, and then I would end up just taking the picture with the digital camera because I just think, well, you know, I can edit it better on digital. So then it negates the point of taking the picture on film. Some of these will be very well used and won't work, as I said. You know, selenium doesn't last forever. Like in a lot of Olympus Strip 35s, you can be burnt on the selenium in them. Literally, the selenium can be burnt out. So what's the place these have in modern photography? There's no place in modern photography really, unless you're a cinematographer. You know, you're doing a video project and you need to get accurate readings of every tiny spot in the room, and you don't want to have to refocus the camera and rejig the, you know, move the camera, meter with the camera. You could just go to every spot in the room and do a reading, and write it down, evaluate that, and set your shutter speed and your shutter angle and your speed and your and your f-stop accordingly. It's really useful for analog photography when you don't trust the internal meter. If you know you can't trust the internal meter, if you just don't want to bother trusting the internal meter, be like, what it's saying, f8 at 125th, but it's a bit brighter than that, so I think maybe it should be 250th. Let's see what the meter says, and as long as you've got a good copy of this meter, it will give you accurate readings, because as I said, it lines up with my DSLR. Whatever my DSLR says, this little thing says as well, and DSLR light meters are some of the most, if not the most accurate, that aren't just light meters. I would never recommend using your phone. I see a lot of people using your phone, and that is the metering from a phone is reflective only. You can't get direct readings. It's reflective only, so you can't really point it at a light source and get a great reading. You can't really put it against something and be like, that's reading at 25 or whatever, because it just works off reflective light. So if you point it to a light source, it gets overwhelmed. In my experience, anyway. So even if you've got all cameras, even if you don't own a film camera, these things are great for studio shoots. So if you want a cheap light meter, find yourself one of these in a charity shop or a second-hand shop and test it. Give it a good test. Take your DSLR, run a couple of tests, see if it works. Because as I said, it's great for studio and cinematography. Because when you're in a studio or cinematography, you don't want to move the camera around because you might have a locked shot that you need, and you don't want to be like. So if you need a cheap option for metering that isn't, a Sekonic or one of those ones you look through and all that, these things are cheap. I would, if you can, try and get a Weston Master III, because that's when they fixed the ISO to go to normal. So 250 wouldn't be 320, 320 wouldn't be 400, 400 would be 400, 800 would be 800, 1600 would be 1600. It'll be alright. And another issue I know about with these things is the numbers are painted on. So if it's been used a lot, the selenium meter probably screwed. So what's the point of using it? But if it's been used, if it's been spun a lot, the paint can come off. The Weston Master III is engraved numbers. Yeah, it's good. It works. It's fine. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.